Efendim hepiniz hoş geldiniz öğleden sonra oturumlarımıza. Oldukça yoğun bir programımız var. Kalabalığımız arttıkça, nüfusumuz arttıkça bu tür etkinliklerde olduğu gibi özür dileyerek bizde de bir takım gecikmeler yaşandı. Oldukça geç başlayabildik. Umut ediyorum ki Salon B'de göreceğiniz oturumlarda, Salon B oturumunda göreceğiniz konuşmalar sizler açısından hani Türkiye'de başka yerlerde dinleme imkanı bulamayacağınız oldukça enteresan konular olacaktır diye umut ediyoruz. Bugün Salon B'de öğleden sonra tarafında 6 tane oturumumuz var. 6 oturumun 4 tanesi, ilk 4 tanesindeki firmalarımızın Türkiye'de bir ofisleri de yok. Bunlar bizimle Innovera ile beraber Türkiye'ye geliyorlar ve Türkiye'deki projelerinde bizlerle beraber çalışıyorlar. İlk sunumu yapmak üzere bize katılacak olan konuşmacımız Fishme'nin Genel Müdür Yardımcısı Bay Allan Carey. Allan Fishme'nin Genel Müdür Yardımcılarından bir tanesi. Bugün bize özellikle çok zorlandığımız insan davranışını şekillendirme, çalışanları güvenlik açısından risk olmaktan çıkartıp güvenlik oyununun içerisine bir oyuncu olarak pozitif davranışlarıyla resmi bizim adımıza iyileştirmek üzere, güvenlik risklerini azaltmak üzere nasıl katkı sağlayabileceğimizden söz edecek. Allan'ın konuşması içerisinde bir müşteri deneyimi de yer alacak bir misafir konuşmacımız da olacak. Yıldız Holding'den, Ülker grubundan bilgi işlem yöneticisi Sayın Mazhar Karagül'le de konuşmanın sunumun bir parçası olarak sağ olsun bizleri kırmadı geldi ve katkı veriyor olacak. Allan'ı alkışlarınızla sahneye davet ediyorum.
Good. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, I won't speak in Turkish, and I won't even try. So please forgive me speaking in English. Hopefully everybody is good. If there's anything you don't understand, please raise your hand and just ask. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how we can disrupt the adversaries. We heard a whole lot about the threat landscape and about the adversaries throughout the morning. And I think what you would all agree, they're getting much more sophisticated in their tactics and techniques. But the method of delivery still is very simplistic. If you look at many of the breaches that have occurred, they occur either through a simple phish or a very targeted type of email, what they call a spear phish. Usually it's where they develop some reconnaissance on the targets, whether or not it's a company or an individual. They'll gather information through Facebook, LinkedIn, other types of social media, Twitter, to gather key specific points of information about individuals within a target organization and develop what they call a spear phish. Very, very targeted, sometimes very hard to identify. So we'll talk a little bit about how we can disrupt that chain of events. I'd like to start off with a little quiz. I like to make these interactive, not just a one-way sort of me talking to everybody. If you look at these three individuals, can you tell me what they have in common? Anybody? They're all male. That's a good one. That's a good start. Two on the left, they have baseball caps, right? The other guy doesn't. Just some common characteristics. If you looked at these three individuals, you would think they have absolutely nothing in common. But what they all are informants. The two on the left were actually street vendors in New York City's Times Square. Back in 2010, there was a bombing attempt in Times Square. Now, if you've been to New York City's Times Square post 9/11, you would probably see a lot of police officers on foot, on horseback, on segways, and there's probably more surveillance, video surveillance in Times Square than in any other part of the world. Two street vendors who sell $2.99 I Love New York t-shirts noticed a Nissan Pathfinder that was parked on a corner. It was there for about 2 hours, and because they're there every day, they thought that was unusual, not part of the normal day. They also noticed that the car was smoking, and it had been left there. So what they did is they notified the police. So two individuals who happen to work a particular street corner every day noticed something that all the camera surveillance and the police on foot didn't notice, which was something suspicious. And they were able to avert the bombing attempt back in 2010. We'll get to the third gentleman in a minute. If you translate that into modern day time, you heard somebody talk about the majority of cyber attacks start with spear phishing or with phishing. And this was a report by Trend Micro. Whether you look at Verizon's data breach report, Mandiant's reports, they will all conclude that many of the cyber attacks today, sophisticated or not so sophisticated, start with a simple phish or an email to an employee to get them to do an action. If you believe what Kevin Mandia, he was the CEO of Mandiant. He's now the CEO and president of FireEye. This was from a congressional testimony. The attackers are going after the people. It's pretty clear. They're going after that individual, as I mentioned during the panel, that carbon-based unit on the other end of the keyboard. That's who they're targeting. Not the systems and not the network, but to get to that individual in order to get into the network and get into the systems. If you look at some of their statistics, I know the gentleman from FireEye this morning went on about the 205 days. That's 205 days longer than any adversary should be in one of our networks. How that actually gets discovered, sometimes the internal organization, they discover it, either some anomalous log activity, something unusual that's happening on the network that they happen to catch if they're even looking at their logs. But the majority of time, it's an external party that notices something unusual. A business partner might say, hey, we're seeing some unusual network traffic. In my country, it's usually a 3-letter agency that shows up on their door in a similar suit as mine. Not always with sunglasses like Agent Smith in the Matrix. But usually they're like, is this your block of IP addresses? And most people are like, uh-huh. They're like, we've been watching your addresses and we think there's something wrong and you need to investigate. More often than not, that's how organizations realize it. If you look at it from a cyber kill chain, how many of you have heard of the cyber kill chain or the kill chain? Anybody? All right, if you want some bedtime reading, there's a white paper. It was developed by Mike Klopper. He was a senior researcher with Lockheed Martin. And he developed this concept of the kill chain. You can Google it and download the white paper and read for yourself. So basically, these are the steps from when an adversary is doing their reconnaissance and gathering intelligence about the target to when they actually weaponize. So what does that mean? A URL that's malicious, an attachment that's malicious, or asking for a username and password in an email, for instance. Until they deliver it, the exploit, the user clicks on something or opens the attachment or gives up their credentials. They actually install or download, whether it's a Trojan, a keylogger, or something like that, the command and communication, then the action. So if you think about those 205 days, that's all the way over here. That's when the organization usually finds out. And the goal is to try and get further and further back in this kill chain, which reduces that window of time, or what we call attacker free time. And you're trying to shrink that window of opportunity. How does that relate to Phish Me and what we do? If you think about what the attackers are going after, they're going after the human. They're going after you. They're going after you. They're trying to get you to do something that you shouldn't do. And they're using different triggers in order to do that. Emotional triggers, whether it's greed, curiosity, trying to get you to either click on a link, give up your credentials, or download that attachment. Somebody mentioned RSA as one of the breaches that occurred back in 2011. I was at RSA when that happened. I'll tell you, it was not a fun time to be at the company. And that simple email that went to 4 mid-level managers was an Excel spreadsheet that had a 0-day attachment in it. One of the individuals happened to click on that Excel spreadsheet. It said, hiring plan for 2012. Now, what mid-level manager wouldn't be interested in opening that and be curious to know? That resulted in about $66 million in damage, just from one email to 4 people. That gets to training individuals and giving them some skills in the organization on how to spot these type of phishing emails. What are some of the emotional triggers? Should you give up your username and password if an email comes in supposedly from the IT department. Is that normal protocol in the organization? Giving them some sense of skills, because the way we've done a security awareness and training within an organization has utterly failed. I mean, if you think about it, it's extremely boring. It's usually PowerPoint for an hour or two, and most people fall asleep or tune out within 15 to 20 minutes, and they don't retain anything. It doesn't change how they operate. If you give them a way to report that suspicious activity easily, that's an early indication that you might be under attack or that you might get that phishing email. And then a mechanism in order to be able to respond quickly and analyze the information that is being reported so you can make a better, more informed decision on what type of remediation or controls you need to put into place in order to stop the attack. Our methodology for training is significantly different than what you may be used to. It's being able to immerse an employee in an experience and doing that continuously throughout the year. If you think about it, how do you remember certain commercials that aired on TV while you were a kid? And you can remember those to this day. From my childhood, I remember slogans like, keeps a lickin' and keeps on tickin'. I don't know if you've ever heard that. That was a Timex commercial. Or things like Breakfast of Champions. That was Wheaties. You may have some of those, and I'm sorry I don't have any analogous type of slogans from childhood if you grew up or are living in Turkey. But I remember those things even to this day. And so the key point is around repetition and being able to train the employees in an emotional experience and do that continuously throughout the year, but not 45 minutes at a time, 2 or 3 minutes, just giving them the pertinent information that they need so that they can understand what are the key things I need to be looking for, and take about 5 seconds and just read the email. Don't just click on it. We're so busy within our work days that we're just trying to get through our email so we can get to our jobs. Once they have the skills, and once they're able to spot some of this, you'll start experiencing results like this. Phishing emails, employees respond to those within the first 4 to 8 hours. So as soon as it's sent, people will start interacting with it. What you see down on the blue bar graph are actually employees that were clicking on a link. This was a simulation. What you see on the line is employees that were actually reporting it. So what we developed was a little email add-in that just sits in the top of the toolbar. So they've gone through the training or go through the training. They have a little button that sits in their Outlook toolbar or Gmail or whatever you might be using in your enterprise. And it's a constant reminder that if they see something that is suspicious when they email, report it. Just click the button. That's all you have to do. It deletes it from their inbox. That way they can't go back and play with it. But more importantly, from a security perspective, what you have are reports of suspicious email activity in a very consistent format. You have all the header information, the contextual details of the email, the original attachment or URL, so you can do analysis on it. But what you want to see are trends like this. I was talking with a CISO in the UK, and somebody from the audience asked him, what's your metric of success? He said, my metric of success is when I have more people reporting and less people clicking. You may have mentioned during the panel, I said, getting people to stop on links about cute kittens. It's curiosity. We developed a scenario around a refrigerator webcam, and the description in it is, we've had people stealing other people's lunches. So we put a webcam on the refrigerator, click on the link to find out what's going on in the kitchenette. You'd be surprised how many people click on that email because they're curious. That's just one example. But giving them an easy way to report it. If you look at it in a different timeline, if you think about that kill chain that I mentioned earlier, and this is just in a matter of 3 hours, the point all the way down the right is usually when an organization finds out. What this shows you from a different perspective is when the simulation started, you start seeing the green and blue dots. Those are people actually reporting the emails, up until the red dot where an employee fell for it. That's when somebody clicked. And then you have all the other people that reported as well. Within a very short period of time, this is within 3 hours. If I'm a security professional and I'm analyzing different types of attacks, I'd rather know sooner rather than later. If you think about it from a crypto locker perspective, would you rather have an employee report an email that could be suspicious carrying crypto locker sooner versus 10, 20, 50 employees falling for the email and downloading crypto locker? Think about the amount of time from a remediation. What's the average time to reimage a machine these days? About 4 hours. Multiply that times the hourly rate for that individual reimaging the machine, and then multiply that by the number of employees that get infected across the day. That's your cost savings right there alone. But being able to understand and know what attacks are coming sooner rather than later is key. And it all ties into something that was talked about on the panel earlier as far as getting that intelligence, a source of internal intelligence. What I thought I'd share with you is a use case. If you read this email, does this look like a suspicious email to you? Other than I've got the red mark hiding the two. But does this look suspicious to you in any way, shape, or form? You might look at the Google. The URL might look off. Very similar email, all eFax. Now it's going to Cubby versus the Google. Another fax. What you might start to notice are the number of pages, too. The resolution, 400 by 400 DPI. Except this one's going to Dropbox now. Does your organization even use Dropbox? They may or may not. Similar. These were all internal emails that we received, because we're a business just like any other business, which ended up being the dire malware. And dire malware was mentioned earlier. Our employees reported this. Why? Because one, we don't use eFax for business. It was pretty logical. They don't have an eFax account. They wouldn't recognize that we don't use Dropbox or Cubby as well as storage areas. So these were the employees in our organization that were actually targeted with this type of email. You'll see all of them that reported it. Remember that little email add-in that I showed you earlier, the little fish? They all reported it within a very short period of time. They were the informants within our own network. They knew that this type of email, one, we don't do eFax, was suspicious, so they just reported it. And we were able to discover the dire malware because we were able to analyze it. So we took that little email button, enabled our employees to report it, and then we did analysis on it. In an automated fashion, we were able to take all those emails, look at them, and say, what's wrong with all these emails? The 400 by 400 DPI, the URL links that they were going to. Group them together and then match them against what was already known bad. So what our research team had already seen. We also collaborate with other threat intelligence providers because we don't have visibility into everything. So we leverage their content as well and be able to develop ways to say, is this bad, or is this spam, or is this an internal email that we can completely ignore and not utilize? And then we're able to push that information out to our SIM and say, looking at all the other log activity, where else have we seen this email come in before? And be able to wipe it from the domain so that other employees within the organization weren't affected or fell for the dire malware as well. Now, one thing's interesting about the dire malware. We reported it in June of last year, before any of the other threat intelligence providers knew about it. Why? If you think back to the three gentlemen, that was my first slide, the gentleman all the way to the far right, he's our VP of Finance. He's the one that discovered dire malware. And we knew about it 10 days before any of the other threat intelligence providers, because one individual thought that an email was suspicious and happened to report it. That's the importance about giving your employees just a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of skill beyond the boring PowerPoint and the training you might be used to, and pulling it all together. This is another way of visualizing all those email reports that came in from our employees and being able to present them in such a way to say, okay, what are some of the bigger bubbles? Those are the number of reports that were received regarding a particular type of phishing, and say, which ones do I need to look at first? You look at the volume, you look at the color coding, in other words, what's the severity of the email, but you can also look at the reputation of the individual that was reporting it. So Allan's horrible at spotting phishing during my training. I'm horrible. So I have a negative score. But people who are very good at reporting and spotting phishing attempts, you can give them a higher positive score. It's another way of prioritizing your analysis and looking at the information. And then being able to respond to your employees. When most people report problems to IT, it's like a black hole. You send an email, you say something's wrong, you get no response back. What we are able to do is send a response back to the employees that reported the suspicious emails and say, hey, this was spam, and then redirect them to some education. Or, hey, this was a new threat. Thank you for reporting it. You saved us a lot of time and a potential breach. You can customize the message back to the employees. That reinforces the learning activity and gives them the positive feedback in order to keep them engaged in the process. Just to wrap up, this is another version of that kill chain that I showed you earlier. It gives you in more detailed steps. The way things happen today, it's where the attack begins, and the cover-up begins where the attack is actually identified, that attacker free time. The goal of most security departments today that I talk to is to shrink that window of free time, because that's the amount of time that the adversary's in the network collecting information and sending it out or exfiltrating it, and being able to shrink that time by getting earlier detection. Because you may be using external threat intelligence information as a source, but if you're not using your own internal threat intelligence, what do I know about my network? What are my people doing? What access privileges do they have? And being able to get them to report suspicious activity because they're the ones that are being targeted, you're missing a key part of that threat intelligence equation in order to be able to detect earlier and defend better against the attackers. So with that, what I'd like to do, I'll skip this in the matter of time, it's pretty self-explanatory, is I'd like to introduce Mazhar Karagule. Hopefully I said that correctly. To be able to come up. Thank you for your time.
Merhaba. Ben de müşteri gözünden aslında slide bitti. Müşteri gözünden PhishMe'yi biz neden kullanıyoruz, ne tip faydalar umuyoruz, ondan bahsetmek istiyorum. İsmim Mazhar Karagüle, Yıldız Holding'de çalışıyorum. Neden PhishMe tarzı bir eğitim sistemine ihtiyacımız var? Çünkü genellikle insanlar hepimizin bildiği gibi aceleciyiz, dikkatsiziz. Gelen maili hemen tıklayarak hemen okumak, içindeki aksiyonu almaya istiyoruz. Bütün araştırmalarda herkes görüyordur. İnsanlar güvenlik zincirinin en zayıf halkasılar. Artık birçok tool geliştiriliyor ama mail sonuçta yine mailbox'a düşüyor ve bir kullanıcının tıklamasıyla riski artmış olabiliyor. Bütün cyber atakların büyük bir kısmı fishleme yani avlama ile başlıyor. Çünkü insan en zayıf halka. İnsanı yakaladığınız zaman bütün bu güvenlik zincirindeki diğer parçaları aşıp kolaylıkla sisteme sızabiliyorsunuz. Bir atak başladığında onu durdurmak daha zor. Dolayısıyla bizim atağı başlamadan durdurmak için elimizden gelen bütün çabayı harcıyor olmamız lazım diye düşünüyorum. İnsanlar bu amaçla eğitilebiliyorlar. Yani ilk başta sonuçlar çok kötü olsa da zaman geçtikçe insanlar gelen mailleri daha dikkatli okumak, hemen gelir gelmez açmamaya, nereden geldiğine bakmaya, hatta ve hatta o maillerin karşıdan size gönderen insanın tarzı yazılmadığına dahi bakarak içindekiler konusunda aksiyon almayı öğrenebiliyorlar. Bu bir süreç. Dolayısıyla sürekli tekrarlandığı sürece veriminin arttığını görüyoruz. En önemli noktalardan bir tanesi de yaptığımız işin bir şekilde ölçebiliyor olmamız lazım. Çünkü ölçmediğimiz takdirde ne kadar fayda sağlıyor veya gerçekten fayda sağlıyor mu bunu bile göremiyor oluruz. Biz Fishme'yi Türkiye'de ilk kullanan müşteriyiz ve 2015 Mart ayından beri elimizden geldiğince aktif olarak kullanıcılarımızda kullanıyoruz. Eğitimimizi arttırmaya çalışıyoruz. Neden kullanıyoruz? Bizim ekibimiz çok büyük bir ekip değil. Dolayısıyla yani her kullanacağımız tool'da, her kullanacağımız aracın bizim işimizi kolaylaştırıcı, ekibimizin zamanını farklı teknolojileri incelemeye ayıracak şekilde kullanmayı planlıyoruz. Bu nedenle cloud-based olması bizim için çok büyük avantaj. Tak çalıştır, hemen devreye alıp ilk senaryoyu başlatabileceğimiz bu uygulama. Senaryo yaratmak çok kolay. Kimlere göndereceğiniz, hangi senaryoya göndereceğiniz, sonucunda tıklayanlar hangi eğitim parçalarını izleyecekler, bütün bunları ayarlayabiliyorsunuz. Çok çeşitli template'ler var. Bunlardan bir kısmı Türkçe. Gitgide de zaten Türkiye'deki yatırımları arttıkça yani Türkçe olan template sayısı da giderek artıyor. Dediğim gibi çok basit. Bir iki klikle bir senaryo oluşturmanız, istediğiniz gruba göndermeniz, sonucunu ölçmeniz kolay. Farklı senaryolar yaratabiliyorsunuz. Yani içindeki maile tıklayarak veya herhangi bir kullanıcı adı, şifre girerek senaryolarından daha kompleks, daha zor senaryolara doğru hareket edebiliyorsunuz. Bunun için de profesyonel hizmetleri var. Ondan faydalanmak güzel. Yani başlangıçta nasıl başlayıp nasıl ilerlemek gerektiğini konusunda çok iyi yönlendiriyorlar. Kimlere göndereceğinizin listesini hemen bulut tabanlı olduğu için yükleyebiliyorsunuz. Gruplara ayırabiliyorsunuz. Hatta departmanlara göre raporlar almak mümkün. İstediğiniz gruba istediğiniz senaryoyu uygulayabiliyorsunuz. Desteğinden şu ana kadar çok memnunuz. Herhangi bir problemde hemen devreye giriyorlar. Çok hızlı aksiyon alıp çözüme ulaştırıyorlar. Demin de bahsedildiği gibi Outlook üzerine eklenen Reporter plugin'i çok faydalı olduğunu düşünüyorum. Özellikle kullanıcılar bunu kullanmaya başladığında fiş olarak, yani av maili olarak görülecek şeyleri tek tıkla bize bildiriyorlar. İnceliyoruz. Yani false pozitifse kullanıcıya geri dönüyoruz. Herhangi bir hani şeye rastlamadık ama bu çok kolay. Ayrıca senaryo ölçümlendirmesi için de çok faydası var. Yani kullanıcının kullandığı pluginleri de bilgilerini de oradan alabiliyoruz. Ve içindeki link gönderdiğiniz maile tıklandığı takdirde kullanıcının bir eğitim portaline yönlendiriliyorsunuz ve eğitimde ne kadar kaldığını görebiliyorsunuz. Dolayısıyla gerçekten eğitimi dinlemiş mi, yoksa karşısına çıkar çıkmaz kapatmış mı gelip tüm bu raporları alıp gerekirse o kullanıcılara ayrı dışarıdan tekrar eğitim sunmak mümkün. Senaryoların sonucunu ölçmek bizim için çok önemli. Çünkü dediğim gibi faydasını görüp görmediğimizi öğrenebilmek için ölçebiliyor olmamız lazım. Bütün bunlar bayağı detaylı bir şekilde raporlanabiliyor. Kim maili açmış, kim okumuş, kim içindekini tıklamış, bunları görebiliyoruz. Hangi eğitim sitesinde ne kadar vakit geçirmiş, gerçekten sizin vermek istediğiniz mesajı okumuş mu, okumamış mı? Reporter yüklü ise bu bağlantılar nereden gelmiş, Reporter'la ilgili değil, bu bağlantılar iPhone'dan mı gelmiş, hangi Internet Explorer'dan mı, Chrome'dan mı, hangi uygulama üzerinden size gelmiş ve linki tıklamış, hangi bölgesel lokasyondan bağlanmış, işte Reporter kullanırsa Acrobat'ta, Flash'ta, QuickTime, Silverlight gibi uygulamalardan hangilerinde patch eksiği var, bütün bunlara kadar görmek mümkün. Ve güzel bir özelliği de senaryoları siz uyguladıkça her senaryoda avlanan kullanıcı listesini ne kadar avlanmış bunları görebiliyorsunuz. Dolayısıyla yani üzerine fokuslanmanız gereken kullanıcı listesine de erişmiş olabiliyorsunuz. Benim anlatacaklarım bu kadar. Varsa soru alabilirim.
Bir iki soru alacak kadar vaktimiz var. Önde bir tane soru var. Bu mikrofon açık mı arkadaşlar?
Merhaba.
Merhaba.
Öncelikle Innovera'ya tekrar hayırlı olsun diyorum Murat.
Teşekkür ederiz.
Hayırlı olsun. Sorum şu, bu maddeler arasında excellent support dediniz. O konuyu biraz daha açabilir misiniz acaba? Hani destekte nasıl hemen destekleri, online destek?
Şöyle, tool dediğim gibi birçok parçadan oluşuyor. Senaryoyu siz tıklayarak oluşturuyorsunuz ama senaryolar üzerinde değişiklik yapmak istiyorsunuz. Template üzerinde oynamalar yapmak istiyorsunuz. Biz mesela daha önce çok yani yaygın değildi. Dili değiştirmek istiyoruz. Türkçe yapmak istiyoruz. Farklı bir ekran sunmak istiyoruz. Bu tip konularda destek ihtiyacımız olduğunda hemen bağlanıyorlar. Nasıl yapılacağını gösteriyorlar. Kendileri yapıyorlar. Onun dışında hani çok tool'un çalışması ile ilgili bunun dışında bir desteğe ihtiyacımız olmadı açıkçası.
Yani yurt dışı destek diye anlıyorum. Direkt
yani
uzaktan erişerek
hemen yapıyorlar. Çok o konuda çok iyi bir desteği olduğunu söyleyebilirim. Bora Bey zor olmasın.
Yok, kolay olacak. Acaba cep telefonlarındaki, yani mobil telefonlarda, akıllı cihazlardaki e-mail istemciler için düğmeleri var mı bu bahsettikleri?
Reporter'ın mı?
Reporter, evet.
Bildiğim kadarıyla yok. Do you have a reporter on the mobile equipment such as tablets, iPhone?
Sorry, I don't have a microphone, but I project pretty well. For mobile devices, it's been very hard.
Alan, you have a mic.
Sorry. Thank you. For mobile devices, it's been very hard because if you look at the Apple iOS stack, if you look at the Android stack, they don't give you the developer tools to be able to go in. It's very hard to get a piece of their real estate. So what we've done is come up with a workaround strategy in lieu of having a button on the mobile to be able to report. I'm happy to talk about that offline if you wish. But if you've ever tried to develop for iOS or Android, it's nearly impossible to do something custom.
Peki, teşekkür ediyoruz Mazhar Bey. Sağ olun. İsterseniz, müsaade ederseniz çay kahve arasında alalım diğer soruları. 3 tane daha oturum yetiştirmek durumundayım. Zaten 1 saat kadar gecikerek başladık. Mazhar Bey'e teşekkür ediyoruz.